Two retirees I used to work with came to me and said, Mark, what kind of used luxury vehicles are out in the market? They didn't want to buy new. They were on a fixed income. They liked a comfortable ride. They didn't want anything too shouty, but they wanted something that was relaxing, safe, reliable, would last a long time, and it wouldn't break their bank. Hopefully it's easy to get in and out of as well, because as we age, we don't move like we used to. Well, guess what? You're in luck, because I put together a list of 5 of the best used luxury vehicles, most of which are only 5 or 6 years of age. One of them is absolutely old as the hills, but it's so good it needs to make the list. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. The first one had to know was going to be a Lexus product. If you want to have a vehicle around a long time and you don't want to be broken by huge expenses, well, the Lexus RX 350 is just for you. Now, the latest generation has a 2.4 liter turbo 4, but if you go back a few years, for example, to 2020, which is what I recommend, you get your 3.5 liter V6 naturally aspirated, made it up to an 8-speed torque converter automatic transmission. It's super reliable. I love these cars. They have about 267 pound-feet of torque and close to 300 horsepower. Front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, you name it. Different options, different strokes for different folks. They have quite a nice styling detail in the front. They've always looked stylish. They've got room for 5, lots of passenger space in the back. Easy to get in and out of for most older folks like myself. The beauty is it gets as many as 27 miles per gallon on the highway, or a combined about 23 miles per gallon, which makes it absolutely easy to afford. It's not going to break the bank. And currently in 2026, they're actually affordable. You find them anywhere ranging from $32,000 to about $42,000 US. Some of them come with hybrids, some of them are NAs, but they're all great. The beauty is they're also, according to Edmunds, they're only going to cost you about $1,400 to $1,500 a year to service, repair, maintain, and keep on the road. That's only about $7,000 to $8,000 in 5 years. It's not a huge amount of money for that amount of luxury. Oil changes, maybe $150. Brakes, pads, rotors, maybe $500 to $700. And because they're not super low profile tires, they're a garden variety tire, it's only going to cost you $800 to $1,200 every 3 or 4 years to change the tires. Absolutely easy to live with, and they look great. Now, but of course, nothing's perfect, and the Lexus RX from back in 2020 has been reported to have a few problems. A little bit of a rattly interior, a little bit of brake wear, rotor wear, of course. They have undersized brakes, and Toyota Lexus products always tend to have the undersized brakes. If you're doing a lot of mountain hill climbs, you would expect to maybe have to change your brakes more frequently. Suspension wear and tear, and the infotainment systems have been a little flaky to say the least. So weighing the pros and cons of the Lexus RX 350, there's some obvious reasons why you would buy this or would not. Pros are their extremely reliable drivetrain, that smooth, silky V6 engine, the comfortable ride, it's plush and supple, high resale value, you won't lose your shirt even if you sell it after a few years, and they are actually very cheap to maintain considering they're a luxury vehicle. Now the drawback is they're a little dated interior compared to some of their competition. The fuel economy is not amazing. The infotainment is a little bit dated and glitchy. These aren't all that sporty to begin with. So if you're looking for something a little sportier, well, I have some great selections for you to follow this one. But all in all, it's reliable, long-lasting, resales high, and they look attractive too. But I'm not that old yet. And number 2 does in fact appeal to me as well. We're talking about the Acura MDX, one of the direct rivals to the Lexus RX. And the MDX features not seating for 5, but guess what? You get a 3rd row, you get seating for 7 for an added level of practicality and an ease of access. Because it's a mid-size SUV, you pretty much just slide on over, shimmy your backside right onto the chair. It's easy to get in and out without too much trouble. The Acura MDX also has a 3.5 liter V6. It does feature a 9-speed automatic transmission. The only drawback is these vehicles actually have a timing belt, which needs a service ongoing, whereas the Lexus RX has a timing chain. That's the only negative when you talk about the Acura versus some of their other rivals. Acura and Honda have been rocking that timing belt for years. It works. Now, it doesn't need to be changed constantly, but say every 80 or 100,000 miles, it's something you've got to be changing. Now, the fuel economy is highly mediocre. Where the Lexus was sitting around 23 miles per gallon average, the Acura MDX features about 22. So it's very comparable. You lose about a mile per gallon, but again, you get the extra size and the space. You get that 7 seats means you can haul more people around too. It's super practical, and you can haul your Sea-Doo or your boat or maybe your garden tractor. Now, an additional beauty is the cost to buy a used Acura MDX on the market. It does come at a little bit of a less premium. The Lexus, you're going to pay $32,000 to $42,000 US, but the Acura MDX you can find as little as $23,000 to $32,000 So there's a full $10,000 offset differential, and it's effectively the same vehicle. It's Honda versus Toyota. So the additional cost in doing timing belts really is negligible when you consider you're saving yourself 5 to 10 grand for effectively the same vehicle. But the Acura has an advantage. It's actually easier to afford and maintain over a long period of time than the Lexus RX. As a matter of fact, you can expect minor repairs, maybe on average about $500 a year. About $1,050 might go out of your pocket every year for maintenance. That's a collective total of maybe $1,500 a year. But most actually say it's only going to cost you a combined between $800 to $1,000 a year. Now, I'd be fibbing if I said this vehicle was perfect. It's not. Ultimately, there are some issues. The 9-speed automatic transmission, for example. Many customers say it's kind of jerky, kind of lurchy. Not particularly unreliable, but it's more of a drivability concern. The infotainment system, glitchy. Some of the sensors sometimes light up when you don't really expect it, and that throws people for a loop. Other problems that some people consider problems, I consider it maintenance, but it's something to think about. The timing belt and the water pump, you've got to swap that out at about 100,000 miles. Don't skip, don't wait, don't defer. That will be the last big mistake you make. On top of it, you're going to expect a transmission service, which gets a bit pricey around 40,000 miles or so, and those combined services can run as high as almost $2,000. But remember, those are typically going to only come up about every 3 or 4 or 5 years for most drivers, so it's really not a big issue when you consider the savings over the Lexus. But there's another one to be wary of. Of course, you've got to be aware that there has been a big recall for a batch of those 3.5-liter V6 engines that had rod bearing failures. That's right, not all of them. And NHTSA says that there have been a list of these vehicles. Make sure the VINs don't align. That 3.5-liter V6 wasn't unique. The MDX, as well as the Honda Odysseys and the Ridgelines, and a lot of these vehicles with that 3.5 V6 have been part of that recall. Now, of course, if there is a conrod failure, there's knocking, there's weird noises, and check engine lights. Could be a loss of oil, and worst case scenario, an engine that just catastrophically fails. Check it out, validate with NHTSA, and you should be good to go. Now, we've personally owned a Mercedes, but I do believe the best place to buy into a Mercedes is the E-Class. That's sort of the middle of the road. It starts to feel like an upscale car. And for 2020, so about 6 years old, it's out of warranty. Be careful, get a pre-purchase inspection always for any of these vehicles. It does feature a 255 horsepower, 2-liter turbocharged engine that cracks out a whopping 273 pound-feet of torque and is mated up to a 9G transmission. That's right, it's a shiftable 9-speed automatic, and it works well. We have a very similar transmission in our car, and it's lovely. It's not the fastest shifting transmission. If you want something more sporty, you've probably got to step over to BMW, maybe Alpha. For most older retired people, they're looking for something that's smoother and more gentle, and this one definitely meets the bill. These hit a 0 to 60 in 6.4 seconds, but more importantly, you can get either rear-wheel drive or the 4MATIC, which is the all-wheel drive, and it's very important, especially for older drivers. They want the sure-footed confidence, especially when the roads get bad and the snow hits. You need something that you can trust, and this is that car. Now, the added bonus over the other two vehicles, which were both mid-size SUVs, this one you get better fuel economy, somewhere in that 25 to 27 miles per gallon. That's going to help a lot, especially with fuel prices rising like they are. We've got to think about that. And the beauty is, a lot of these cars depreciate, and if you're looking for a used luxury vehicle, that plays in your favor. That's how I've always purchased mine, and my C-Class, we did the same thing there. I always buy mine 3, 4, 5 years out. That way, I see that 50 to 60% depreciation, and that money goes in my pocket. But with that said, you can find these vehicles, a 2020 E-Class, for as low as $25,000, but those are usually higher mileage. Expect to pay $30 to $35 for a Midland vehicle, and as much as $35 to $50,000 for a premium, well-looked after, low-mileage example. Maintenance is a little more. It's a German vehicle. They like to build vehicles that run optimally when they're well-maintained. And as a result, Edmunds claims that they're about $3,500 to $4,000 per year for servicing. So if you want to ride in the lap of luxury, it's going to come at a bit of a cost. So some of those savings on fuel, you're offsetting with increased costs of maintenance. Now, if you don't put a ton of miles on, some of these costs do get deferred. I mean, Mercedes-Benz has an alternating A and B service. A service, usually very simple, oil change, a few inspections. B service, usually a little more involved, some filters, oil change, and some further inspections. A lot of it's based on the mileage as well, and so there could be some costly maintenance down the road, transmission services, differential services, and the costs just continue to rise. That's why it's actually better to find a lower cost example. Average oil changes for the Mercedes E-Class, $250 per service. Brake pads and rotors average about $1,000. A transmission service ranges from $500 to $800, and you're going to do that on a Service B every so often. Maybe I think it's 60, 70, 80,000 kilometers. You're going to anticipate to do a transmission service. So some of these extra services do add up the cost. But again, it's a beautiful, lovely vehicle. It's quiet, it's calm, it's serene, and it's low to the road. It handles beautifully. Now, some issues, of course, Mercedes would be no different than Acura or Lexus. Electronic gremlins, faults, codes. We've had some on ours. So running a low voltage battery that is unhealthy is going to cause you problems, kicking out sensor faults and failures. It's going to be harder to start. You're going to have issues. So keeping a battery that's well charged, a newer battery is going to help eliminate some of that. But we've seen a lot of electronic gremlins. We've heard front end noise from our front differential, and realistically, the interior has its share of shakes and rattles. Some people say the 9-speed automatic can be a little abrupt at times. My personal take is it's actually quite smooth overall. Some people have complained about it. Oil leaks, although very rare, they're bolted together very well. There have been some consideration for that. In rare cases, engine seals, timing chain covers, and the like could also be possibilities. And a big one, which I've got personal experience with my BMW X5 that I had air ride suspension, this is no different. You can expect anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 per corner if your air ride system failures. You get these airbags, self-leveling, and if that system goes, it can cost you a lot of money. This usually only equipped in the more premium versions, so in many cases, if you can opt out, I personally would. You want longevity, you want simplicity as you get older. Nobody wants these weird failures. So I personally steer away from self-leveling and air ride suspension systems. The drawbacks, more expensive maintenance than some of their competitors like Lexus and Acura. But of course, it does get a much better driving experience. It's more handled, stuck to the road, quiet and serene. The build quality is generally very, very good. But the other drawbacks, of course, the complexity means more expensive failures. Issues, when they come up, they're going to be more pricey, and you have to use premium fuel. Now that said, its competitors, most of them do too. Most luxury vehicles tend to use premium gas because they use either turbocharged or higher output engines, and that usually needs higher octane gas. Now the fourth one isn't one that usually hits my radar, but Cadillac. That's right, the CT5. I love the car. You can get a couple different engine configurations, a 2-liter turbo 4 or a 3-liter turbocharged V6. Step into 237 horsepower in base trim or all the way up to 335 horsepower in the luxury trim, or the CT5V gives you 360 horsepower. They both come with a 10-speed automatic transmission. I'm not the biggest fan of that, and we know more gears. It's all about fuel economy these days. The CT5 gives you a standard rear-wheel drive platform, and in certain platforms, that's the only one you can get. But all-wheel drive is an upgrade for certain trim lines. Fuel economy is not bad, 21 miles per gallon for the twin-turbo V6, but you've got to expect that. You got to pay to play. Or if you want the 2-liter turbo 4, as much as 26, 27 miles per gallon means it's actually very frugal and very affordable, especially with these days with these high fuel costs. You're going to love it. According to Kelley Blue Book, you can also anticipate a cost anywhere from $20,000 to about $31,000 for the cost of a used 2020 CT5. Now, if you want the Blackwing or the V or any of that goodness, expect to pay way over $30,000. But you know what? For the base trims, you can get into these very affordably, and you get the added benefit of the great fuel economy. They all look pretty nice too. According to Edmunds, the average repair costs are around $6,000 for 5 years, or about $8,000 for maintenance in 5 years time frame. That's $1,700 a year for maintenance, $1,200 for unexpected repairs, and a combined average ownership cost between $2,500 and about $3,000 a year. Puts it almost right on the heels of the Mercedes-Benz. Oil changes $120 up to about $200. Brake pads $500 to about $900. It's going to be very close to what you're expecting with Mercedes. Certainly not as cheap to run as an Acura or a Lexus, but it's not quite Mercedes-Benz dollars either. Reliability isn't exactly stellar, but according to J.D. Power, it gets about a 73 out of 100, which is considered very average. It's not bad, but if you love Cadillac and you like GM and you like the products, where else do you go? There have been some recalls. That 10-speed automatic transmission, there's currently a recall for that. It's basically a software update. There could be drivability problems or even catastrophic failures if it's not sorted out in direct time. Electronic door handles, oh yeah, mucho dinero when they fail. Minor rattles or noise inside, well, our Mercedes does the same. So it seems like they all do that. It's the overabundance use of plastics and cheap fittings and snap together parts that seems to be the common theme with almost every vehicle these days, luxury or otherwise. The earlier production models had issues with thermostats, leaks, reliability challenges, so I always recommend go with the later models, the newer models that you can. 2020 isn't bad. If you have a more budget, I would suggest even maybe slightly a newer version. But again, the Cadillac CT5 has both pros and cons. The pros of the CT5, they offer you a smooth ride, sporty handling. They actually handle really well, especially when you step up to the more sport trim lines. Strong twin-turbo V6, absolutely. That's a hot rod. Good fuel economy for a luxury sedan, especially in the 4-cylinder. And the all-wheel drive being available is great for Canadian winters, any winters, northern US, anywhere that sees snow or the salt belt. That's a great option to have. The cons, unfortunately, first-year model reliability issues. The interior quality is not as premium as the BMWs or the Audis or even the Mercedes-Benz, and it does depreciate quite quickly. So ultimately, if you're looking for a domestic product, you don't want to worry about the German manufactured vehicles, and you just want something that is definitely fun, frivolous, but it's comfortable. You can get ease in and out easily, all-wheel drive options, good fuel economy, a moderate level of service and repair costs means this Cadillac CT5 might be on your radar. Now these retirees ask me, Mark, do you have anything older? And that's why this last one makes my list. Because sometimes you just want something older, tried and true, been around a long time and has a proven track record. Because number 5 goes to the old 2000 Lexus LS 400. You can't deny it. It's a 4-liter V8, naturally aspirated, with the engine designated 1UZ-FE. It produced about 250 to 260 horsepower, had a 4-speed automatic transmission, rear-wheel drive, and for a 0 to 60 time of about 7.5 seconds, it was more than peppy enough to get up and go at any time. Even by today's standards, it's still plenty quick. It does come with a 32-valve V8 engine, an independent double wishbone suspension that was almost unheard of back then. And it was known for its absolute perfect, serene driving experience. Super quiet, super smooth, and super reliable. Notice it's only V8 on this list, but it also happens to have comparable fuel economy with a combined fuel economy rating of about 21 miles per gallon or as much as 26 miles per gallon on the highway, simply because it was a slow-turning V8 with just the right amount of gearing, kept the fuel consumption down. Now, you're probably thinking these would cost a fortune. There must be classics. But no, $3,000 to $5,000 for a old beat-up, crapped-out wreck. I would say stay away from those vehicles. Then you can get into that $5,000 to $10,000 range for something that's fairly well looked after, probably has some marks, probably reasonable miles, maybe 100,000, 200,000 miles on it. But if you want to find something, look for that needle in the haystack. You can find them. Low mileage, well looked after. They're not all banged up. You can find those typically from $10,000 to $15,000. So quite affordable. Now, considering the maintenance cost for Lexus as an entire brand, it's about $551 per year for servicing. The LS 400 is somewhere between $500 and $1,000 per year. And some of that just because of a lot of the parts are starting to age and become dated, and some of the plastics, rubbers, bushings. Those are the areas that are going to start needing a little bit of attention. So you're going to add a little extra cost in there. The timing belt, the water pump, anywhere from $600 to $900, even count $1,000. You might need to do that every few years. Air suspension, $800. Maybe up to $1,000 or $1,200, yes, if it needs some refixing. And a radiator replacement, which is not uncommon. They start to get corroded and crusty, and they can start to spout a leak. $500 to $800, depending parts and labor and the kind of shop you're going to. So they're not overly expensive. Brakes, you're cheap as well, $500 to $700. Oil change, $120. Quite an affordable vehicle to own anyhow. But it is a Lexus. They are reliable. However, they're not perfect. Anything can break. So some of the issues you can expect: the timing belt around 90,000 miles, power steering pumps, they start to leak, starter motor, and they're a bit of a pain to change. Transmission mounts, they wear, and as I've said, bushings, mounts, they all start to get clunky. When you start hearing clunking noises in the chassis, that's part of an indication. Suspension bushings, ball joints, as I've said, as they age, any car will do that. Oil cooler leaks, oil cooling system, rad hoses, water pumps, thermostats, radiators, all of those parts, they will start to spring a leak. They're well made, they don't inherently become a big problem, but something to be aware of. If those hoses are soft and squishy, time to replace. Injectors, ignition coils, all part of common failures, but they're maintenance. Dashboard electronics, the lights start getting dim behind the actual tach and the speedometer. Window regulators, But any car moves a window up and down 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, they'll start to fail. And of course, just general aging. Seats, they start to get cracked, worn. The bolsters start to look terrible. Wiring gets brittle. So you could start to develop the odd aging electrical issue as well. But overall, nothing one specific issue. These are just a general group of issues that some people tend to find with aging vehicles, and the Lexus LS 400 is no different. But ultimately, the Lexus LS 400 has an absolute legendary reliability record. With well-known many documented cases of 300,000 to 500,000 miles, there's even been some cases of 1 million miles. That's right, 1.6 million kilometers have been documented on some of these engines and some of these early LS 400 drivetrains. So of course, pros, cons, you name it. There's good, bad, and ugly of everything. And some of the benefits are extremely reliable engines, the smooth ride and quiet cabin, high build quality, and relatively cheap maintenance versus a lot of their competitors. The downside, older electronics, wiring that can start cracking, fuel economy is mediocre, parts aging like suspension, ball joints, bushings, engine mounts, and the timing belt service. The timing belt becomes a little bit nitpicky when you consider most people who drive older cars don't want to be bothered with expensive maintenance items. And remember, a lot of those items, the labor, the parts, are more aligned with what that car was priced at new. It's a luxury car maintenance. Go to the Lexus shop, it's going to cost you their shop rates. $200 plus a shop rate an hour, it's going to cost you some money. So that can be a bit of a nickel and dimer. But ultimately, the Lexus LS 400 is an absolute gem amongst gems. But all 5 of these offer great experiences, ease of access, safety, serene cabins, all beautiful vehicles that get decent fuel economy and a reasonable cost of maintenance. And whether you want to retire and you want to buy something like this, or you just want something like this because it's cheap and affordable to maintain, have at it. They're great cars on any account. And with all of that said, right there, the only brand new Lexus vehicles I would buy this year and the only BMWs I would buy this year. If you're looking for something a little bit different, hope those float your boat. Hope you all have an absolute marvelous day, everybody. Hope to see you next time. See you then. Bye-bye.